Woohoo!
And it's alive. The Hangout is alive. This is Ed Dyer from Connecticut. We are now in the TWIS. Hello, Jani, I think. It's Jani.
Hello.
This is the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout. We got a full house here. Joining us are AJ. How you doing, AJ?
I'm doing great.
And we have Amy.
Hello.
Amy from Florida. Amy, do you guys get autumn in Florida? I don't know. No changing of the trees. No, that's too bad.
No, I wish. That's like my favorite season.
And also joining us are Dale. Is Dale.
Dale twice? Dale squared?
Now he's doubled. Two Dales. Two Dales better than one. Twice as much fun. And we have Jani from Finland. And Patrick will be joining us a little bit later. He's busy cooking, I believe, at this point. Listening, no doubt. Yes?
I'm sorry, I just read the chat. He said, Jani, are you drunk? You never talk.
That's true. I think he's always drunk.
I don't know, I gotta tell you. Jani's got a spa. I got a hot tub. Not a hot tub. Jeez, I can't even.
A jacuzzi?
No. A spa, what amounts to. A room sauna. There we go. It's got a sauna.
Like
anybody with a sauna's got to be a very cool guy. So.
3 different RPGs, like mining gold over there.
Oh man, I know that's bandwidth. That's what gives Patrick a lot of problems. His bandwidth down there, particularly his up bandwidth, is really bad. So it makes it difficult for him to get a really good picture in the Hangouts. However, we have some great science stories to talk about. Plate tectonics on Europa. We have an autism story. Intervention helping 6-month-olds with autism symptoms, either eliminating those symptoms or delaying the development of those symptoms. A couple of stories Pamela Sue Taylor was going to talk about if she does show up. And one really is the fake, biased, and poorly researched stories that too often get published and drive me bananas.
Yeah.
What else? Interesting one about female baboons who socialize with males live longer than those that don't. And my question being, does that relate in any way to human society? Dale is going to tell us talk about one of his favorite subjects of mine, protein folding. When it comes to DNA and cell replication, everything starts with protein folding. If we can ever find out how the heck that works, then we can really make some tremendous progress in medicine. There's an article posted in BBC Canada, I think, that Dale may also talk about. Sir John Franklin, an explorer whose ships disappeared. He was trying to find the Northwest Passage, and now they think that they finally discovered at least one of his ships. And I got another story about solid light, making solid light out of photons. So, the first story being plate tectonics found on Europa. And scientists have found evidence of plate tectonics on Europa, Jupiter's moon, Europa. This is the first sign of this type of surface shifting geological activity on a world other than Earth. And we're finding more and more that we think of Earth as this very, very dynamic environment and perhaps being in many ways unique from other places, even in our solar system, and we're finding that is not the case. Researchers have clear evidence of Europa's icy crust expanding. However, they could not find areas where the old crust was destroyed to make room for the new. While examining images taken from NASA's Galileo orbiter in the early 2000s, planetary geologist Simon Caterhorn, University of Idaho, and Lois Parker of Johns Hopkins University discovered unusual geological boundaries. We had puzzled for years as to how this new terrain could be formed. We couldn't figure out how it was accommodated. The surface of Europa is riddled with cracks and ridges. Surface blocks are known to have shifted in the same way blocks of Earth's outer ground layer on either side of the San Andreas Fault moved past each other in California. Many parts of Europa's surface show evidence of extensions, where wide bands, miles wide, form as the surface ripped apart and fresh icy material from the underlying shell moved into the newly created gap, a process akin to sea floor spreading on Earth. They studying Europa often reconstructed the moon's surface blocks into their original configuration. It's with a jigsaw puzzle. We got a picture of what the surface looked like before the disruption occurred. When Caterhorn and Proctor rearranged the icy terrain in the images, they discovered that more than 12,000 square miles of the surface were missing the moon's northern latitude. Further evidence suggests that the missing terrain moved under a second surface plate. Caterhorn and Proctor saw ice volcanoes on the overriding plate, possibly formed through melting and absorption of the slab as it dove under the surface, and a lack of mountains at the subduction zone, implying material was pushed into the interior rather than crumpled up as the two plates smashed together. They believe the subductive area was absorbed into Europa's ice cell, which may be 20 miles thick, rather than breaking through it onto the Europa's underlying ocean. On Europa's relatively young surface, 40 to 90 million years, have seen evidence of material moving up from the shell, but until now no mechanism had been found for moving material back into the shell, and possibly into the large ocean below. Europa may be more Earth-like than we imagine. If it has global plate tectonic system, not only the discovery make it one of the most geologically interesting bodies in the solar system, it also implies two-way communication between the exterior and the interior, a way to move material from the surface into the ocean, a process which has significant implications for Europa's potential as a habitable planet.
Well, I kind of thought this was common knowledge. Europa's, it looks like it's always undergoing some kind of tectonic movement.
I hadn't heard about tectonics before.
Well, if you just look at the planet, the moon, it looks like it's just fractured everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's why we've always wanted to go there to see what's under the ice.
And we still want to.
Oh, I think we're going to.
I think when you look at the cracks and that cracking, the question would be, is that strictly subsurface? Whereas in this particular study, what they're talking about is an interaction. Plates moving and interacting with one another, just like on Earth, where one dives under the other.
Mm-hmm.
And as they say, they put the surface together in a little jigsaw puzzle, and they're missing a piece, 12,000 miles wide. Where'd it go? And the answer is, I'm assuming that it went underneath. Yeah.
In the ocean. Yeah, Amy, do you know of any missions in the future they have planned to go to Europa?
I don't think that there's anything concrete yet, but I know that they're working on plans to Europa because I've seen some news articles lately that's calling, I guess, for maybe instrument designs was the last thing I saw. Instrument suggestions, that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen mock-ups of robots that they would possibly.
There was one. I feel like it's called JUICE. Hold on. Let me look that up. I feel like that is an acronym that belongs with Europa. I don't know if it was. Yeah, I don't know if it was just like in the planning stages or it may be like a NASA ESA cooperative mission. But I feel like I saw something about this before, and it involved Europa and Ganymede, and I think Enceladus, and maybe another Saturnian moon. So, yeah, I think the last thing that I can find here is from 2013. So I don't think that there's been anything updated, but hold on, I'm gonna find. I'll add the link. It's a NASA and a JPL mission. It's supposed to be for 2022.
2022. That'd be good.
Mhm.
You hear about
And it is.
they're gonna have
Seeing
a
if I can.
permanent.
Go ahead.
Oh, did you hear about Putin saying they're gonna have a permanent colony on the moon by 2030?
Yes. Oh, okay. So they do have. It looks like they have instruments and everything for this. I was trying to find out what that. Oh, Jupiter Icy Moon Explorer is what JUICE stands for.
Oh.
And I added the link to the chat.
Okay.
That's the most updated link that I can find that has information on it. I think that was from like May of last year. And so I don't know if it just got pushed to the side or scrapped or if they're still continuing with it.
The magnometer juice. Ganymede, Europa, Callisto. How far is it? How long would I wonder would the trip be to get to
Well,
Saturn?
it looks, well, to get to Saturn, that's a good question, because it looks like for this mission, if it launched in 2022, then it would most likely arrive at Jupiter somewhere around like 2030. That's when it was starting to do, or planning to do its science and flybys and that sort of thing.
There's a picture. Our friend Europa. All those orange veins across it.
One of our best bets for life in our solar system.
Well,
I
for you
added
to,
Enceladus. Enceladus is pretty cool too.
Yeah. Io.
I don't
we're
know
going to
if
be
Io would
landing.
be a very good place to find life, but it might be any different kind.
Well,
It's got a lot of volcanism. Okay, so it looks like the travel time is probably somewhere around 6 years to get to. Depends, because like Cassini, I think took about 6 years to get to Saturn, but
that was years ago.
it also depends, I think, on the trajectory and like what they're planning on doing. If they're gonna fly by something else, or maybe do a gravity assist from a different planet. I don't think that it took New Horizons or Voyager that long to get to Saturn.
No, Horizon. I mean, yeah, if Horizon can get to the edge of the solar system in, what, how many months? It's a very short time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's the fastest spacecraft of that kind right now, I think. But it just depends, I guess, on like what type of propulsion system they have and what type of trajectory, like what they want to do on their way out there as to how long it takes.
Yeah, because they always try and throw in other missions on other planets or moons.
I wonder, I mean, you get funding for projects through Congress, unless you get private funding. You need to be able to show in some way how this is going to benefit some sort of commercial interest. You're talking about colony on the moon, which obviously not going to happen anytime soon, mining on the moon.
Well, I think the next big thing is going to be mining in space, whether it be governments or private corporations. Mining on asteroids, mining on the moon, because that's where most of the helium is, and we're running out of helium because all the birthday balloons. So we need to go get some of that.
As far as Europa goes, if my memory serves me correctly, the movie 2001, wasn't that the boy god or the boy son or whatever the heck it was? He said, here's 2 suns, you can explore everywhere, but
Okay. I muted Amy there. What were you saying, Ed?
I was saying that we've been warned. In the movie 2001, the whatever the heck, the child son, the child god, whoever the heck that was, said, you can go anywhere. I'm giving you 2 suns, but don't go to Europa.
You know what? That's ridiculous. Because if it was really some form of intelligent life like that, it's like it's the analogy would be put like a little kid taking a big red button and putting it in front of him and saying, "Don't push that button."
Oh, exactly.
Come on. Don't go there. Of course we're going to go there.
There's really, I mean, as we do more of these missions, we get land on an asteroid. We get landing on celestial bodies down pat. We were able to land the rover on Mars, so we can land the robot on Europa. We learn more and more about these planets, these moons, everything in our solar system.
So Europa has a ton of water on it, right? That's the one?
Yes, it has an ocean under it, under the surface.
And that's the one they want to put the submarine? They want to get a submarine and throw it in underneath? Is that true?
Yeah, I think they have a couple different designs. I don't know which one they're going to go with finally, but I think it's going to require a couple different crafts, one that maybe orbits, one that lands, and another one that comes off of the main one on the surface.
And a submarine? A submarine drilling into the surface of Europa and going underneath to see what is there.
How would you like to be the How would you like to be the one from NASA trying to sell that to Congress? We're going to fly a submarine to another planet.
Well, what you've got to be able to say, okay, we've got ice and tectonics. Maybe we've got ice diamonds or ice crystals or something, or maybe we can all these tectonic plates we can use for energy or something.
I think that'd be so much fun. Okay, we're gonna make this submarine, and we're gonna make it so it can fly and leave the Earth's atmosphere and fly a submarine to another planet. That's it sounds ludicrous, but it's all cool.
It does sound ludicrous, but I think that's why NASA's been pursuing these missions like NASA Nemo that me and Amy were talking about earlier. That we got to watch their Hangout that they did last night, which is the first one they did, and Wendy was in Houston, which is where Patrick is, and she was doing a hangout with the crew that was 62 feet underneath the ocean at Aquarius, and it's really neat to watch them do that and hear the commander speak and the other crew members.
Cool.
Yeah, there's a story, Dale, I think, will hopefully tell us about, we're talking about expeditions. And we know more, we probably, well, I'm sure we know more about, let's say, Mars, the surface of Mars, where we land, etc., than we do underneath the deep ocean. We got no clue what's going on underneath the deep ocean. Could be anything there.
Drives me crazy how they always want a payback, some sort of commercial payback for stuff. Basic science never works like that. You got to go out there, and it's like, did they know the commercial viability of quantum physics before, you know, when it was discovered? No, they didn't. It came way after.
NASA is
do basic research.
Technology that's come out of NASA's research has just paid itself over many times over.
Yeah, give them a budget, leave them alone.
Yes. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. All right, I am going to move on to the next story, talking about autism. And an intervention with 6-month-olds with autism eliminates symptoms, developing delay. Now, the really interesting thing about this is we're not talking about medication. We're not talking about giving children medication. You're talking about parents and therapists working with the child, and you're talking about improving their, I don't know, social interaction skills. And yet with that, this particular study, it's called Infant Start or something, they really can show dramatic improvement. Treatment at the earliest age with symptoms of autism spectrum disorder appear, sometimes in infants as young as 6 months, significantly reduces symptoms, so that by age 3, most who have received the therapy had neither ASD nor development delay. And this is from University of California at Davis, the Mind Institute. And this is where Dr. Kiki Kirsten went to college. The treatment is known as Infant Start. Was administered over a 6-month period to 6 to 15-month-old infants who exhibited marked autism symptoms, such as decreased eye contact, social interest or engagement, repetitive motive movement patterns, and a lack of intentional communication. It was delivered by people who were most in tune with and spent the most time with babies, their parents. And the co-authors on the study were Sally R. Rogers and Sally Osmanoff. Most of the children in the study, 6 out of 7, caught up in their learning skills and their language by the time they were 2 to 3. Most children with ASD are barely even getting diagnosed by then. For the children who are achieving typical development rates, or are essentially a million, have speeded up their development rates and profiles, not for every child in our study, but for 6 out of 7. And she credited the parents in the small study as really the ones making the difference. It was with parents, not therapists, who did that. Parents are there every day with their babies. It's the little movements of diapering, feeding, playing on the floor, going for a walk, being on a swing that are critical learning moments for babies. These moments are what parents can capitalize on in a way that no one else really can. We want to make referrals for early intervention as soon as possible, as soon as there are signs that a baby may be developing autism. In most parts of the country and the world, services that render autism-specific development skills are just not available for infants this age. The treatment was based on a highly successful Early Start Denver model, also developed by Rogers and another professor at Duke University. And is usually provided in a home by trained therapists and parents. Parents were coached to concentrate their interactions on supporting their infants' individualized development needs and interests. And this has got to be true for every kid. And in embedded these practices into all their play and caretaking, focusing on creating pleasurable social routines to increase the children's opportunities for learning. Parents were encouraged to follow their infants' interest and subtle clues and gauge activities in a way that can optimize their children's attention. The treatment sessions included greeting and parent progress sharing, a warming up period of parent play followed by discussion of the activity and intervention goals, discussion of a new topic using a parent guide, parents interacting on a typically daily routine with their child while fostering social engagement, communication, and appropriate play with coaching from therapists. Parents practicing the approach with their children across 1 or 2 additional home routines with toys and caregiving activities. All of the participants who were receiving treatment were between 6 and 15 months old, lived within a 1-hour drive of the Mind Institute, and came from families where English was the primary language. And of course, you're the advantage here. You've got a treatment center near you. So not only is your child being diagnosed with a development problem, but also being able to be treated and dramatic improvement ensuing. The study measured the children's and parents' response to the intervention. Treatment began immediately after enrollment and consisted of 12 1-hour sessions with infant and parent. It was followed by a 6-week maintenance period with biweekly visits and follow-up assessment at 24 and 36 months. Treatment sessions focused on parent-child interaction during typical daily life. The children who received the intervention had significantly more autism symptoms at 9 months, but significantly lower autism severity scores at 18 to 36 months when compared with a small group of similar systematic parents who did not receive the treatment. Overall, the children who received the intervention had less impairment in terms of autism diagnosis and language and development delays later. And this is actually the kind of thing that kind of really focused behavior, where you're really intensely learning about your child, picking up the visual clues and things. In a particular case, I mean, that's an amazing amount of improvement for autistic children, and it is strictly therapy. It's not medication.
Right. I think that's really important. Yeah, we cover autism quite a bit. What's the implications here that therapy is the more preferred method to help the children?
Well, it shows how many more children with the proper training, proper therapy, the right kind of education, the kind of social interaction at home, how many more children there are who can become productive in society, rather than having a cost of children with autism, more severe forms of autism. There's a cost to society. Now, if you can treat them earlier, you're saving money, and then in the end, you're getting more benefit because of the contribution these children will be making.
Yeah. One of my friends has an autistic child, and he was saying, you know, how expensive it is. So expensive, but how happy his kid was just from the social interaction and the special attention he got in those kind of programs. So it's really important that we make that available to more children, the ones that are more unfortunately, well, can't afford it.
I'm going to go the other way on this one. What were the admission requirements in order to say that that child was autistic? And how do we not know that the outcome would have been the same without treatment?
Well, I said it in the story, which I have now put away, but what it comes down to is you bring the child in, and the child is observed by the people in the research program, and they're initially the ones making that diagnosis. Or maybe you have a parent that's already received some kind of a diagnosis, but you're talking about a 6 and 15-year-old child. Let me go to itself.
Is autism still something we can't diagnose pre-birth?
I'm not sure. You know what? I always thought it was a clinical thing where they were, you know.
Right. Well, I know women, yeah, have the doctors use needles and check the health of the kid.
So I found something. It says, presently we don't have a medical test that can diagnose autism. Instead, specially trained physicians and psychologists administer autism-specific behavior evaluations. So it's based on behavior, and to me, that makes this study, and unless I'm missing something, it makes this weaker.
Yeah, because it's autism genetic.
Well, they're being diagnosed based on behavioral problems. They've got one. They say high-risk children with older siblings with autism who do not develop autism. Low-risk children. That's the control group. So they had a control group.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. Of the 7 babies in the study, 4 were part of the sibling study. In addition to these 4, the other 2 children were referred by community parents. The treatment group was compared with 4 other groups of children that included high-risk children with older siblings with autism who did not develop autism, low-risk children who were the younger siblings of typically developing children, infants who had developed autism by the age of 3, and children who also had early autism symptoms but chose to receive treatment at an early age. So the key part here is the age of the children being treated. Let's see. Infant intention to parent, vocal, and faces and voices. Parent-child interactions that attract infants' attention, bringing smiles. This is part of the treatment. Bringing smiles and delight to both. Parent imitation of infant sounds and intentional actions. So there's a list of what is included. Here's a, let's see, a screen share. Get back here, attempt the old screen share again. Autism, early signs in an infant. And here's the key. We're talking about treating an infant, not treating a child, not waiting until that child has been diagnosed when they're 3. It's unusual visual fixations, usually strong and persistent examination of objects. You have abnormal repetitive behaviors, spending unusually long periods of time repeating an action, looking at their hands or rolling an object. Lack of age-appropriate sound development. delayed development of vowel sounds, delayed intentional communication, neural facial tones, and decreased efforts to gesture and gain parental attention, and decreased interest in interaction, greater interest in objects than in people.
I think I'm autistic. No. I like you guys. I'm just wondering, yeah, so is it genetically passed on from mother to child, and can we, you know, diagnose this before birth and maybe start some kind of therapy before then?
Well,
Maybe two mothers rubbing
everything starts with genes, with the genome and the epigenome. Everything's an interaction. I've got to believe for almost any condition that develops in a child, not any, but the vast majority, there's some kind of a predisposition towards that in the genome.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have that interaction, and the child is interacting with the environment when it's in the womb. So I don't know, nutrition could be a factor. I've never heard of that. I don't know of that being a factor in something like autism. But these characteristics manifesting themselves in a 6-month-old child, I'm going to guess there's some kind of a predisposition from the genetic code.
Right, and how are we looking at treating things these days with stem cells? And the issue is always, well, where do we get those stem cells? Well, if they're already in the womb, there's stem cells there, but is the autism linked to the stem cells that the baby has? I don't know.
I think that's the kind of thing where we've got to do a lot more if we're talking about identifying this at the genetic level, dealing with it on the genetic level. And to tell you the truth, I'm a little hesitant about dealing with something like autism at the genetic level because there's such a wide spectrum. So I would prefer to see, let's pay close attention to the child. And you can have a high-functioning autistic person or a high-functioning autistic child, and you don't want to give them medication. You don't want to treat them because that can be an advantage for some people. Some aspects of that autism disorder can infer an advantage, like with temporal grandin. They're looking at the world differently. They're able to solve some problems differently. So I'd almost rather wait and see if you can find a good therapy, particularly like this, that's not very invasive at all. You're talking about education. You're talking about interacting with a child. You're talking about doing almost normal things with that child. You just have to pay more attention, let's say. You're learning how to play with the child, let's say, a little bit better. Mm-hmm. So it's all involved in interacting with the child as opposed to dealing with it genetically, and you don't know what the consequences might be, and you're only treating the child where there's some kind of development disability expressing itself.
Right. Well, one of the quotes there you said was, "We want to make referrals for early intervention as soon as there are signs that a baby might be developing autism." So it sounds like autism, it gets worse as it develops. So maybe it's
mm-hmm.
not genetic.
Depends the age at which they begin to receive treatment or therapy. And I didn't realize that this particular treatment seems to be very successful for 6 and 15-year-olds. It's less successful with 3-year-olds. And even with 3-year-olds, I guess with 3-year-olds you're learning how to cope. You're learning how to cope with the symptoms, perhaps through special education. I don't know. Whereas here you're actually talking about change, almost like an epigenetic change to the child, so that it's not going to develop these kinds of severe development disorders.
Yeah, I'm not even really familiar with the types of medications that an autistic child would take for treatment.
No idea.
Yeah.
All right. We were talking about the genome, dealing and treating problems at the genome level. There's a story here. Dale can hopefully cover. He knows more about this particular subject of protein folding than I do, and that is mapping the body's protein folding machinery wins a major prize.
So yeah, map of body's protein folding machinery wins major prize. So that's awesome. These people, Kazutoshi Mori, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Peter Walter, they got the Lasker Award for discovering how the body fixes misshapen proteins. So as a protein is out there and they're not, there's a problem with it, they discovered how the body deals with it and fixes it. That's a cool thing. So it's speculation season once again for Nobel Prize watchers. Monday morning, winners of the prestigious Lasker Awards for 3 areas of research in medicine and biology were named. And the so-called American Nobels often presage their European counterpart. 86 Lasker laureates have gone on to receive Nobel Prizes, including 47 in the last 3 decades, according to the Lasker Foundation. This year, Kazutoshi Mori and Peter Walter will receive a Lasker for discovering how the body fixes misshapen proteins, which would otherwise cause damage or disease. In a part of the cell called the endoplasmic reticulum, another Lasker will go to Alain Louise Benabid, I think, at the Joseph Fourier University in Grenoble, France. Sorry, did I pronounce that right? Anyway, and Melon DeLong, the researchers behind deep brain stimulation, a surgical technique to alleviate certain symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Mary Claire King will also receive a Lasker for her work contributing both to medical science and human rights. She uncovered the gene location and significance of the BRCA1 gene, which increases the risk of hereditary breast cancer. She also developed techniques that use DNA to help reunite missing persons and their families. So roughly 1/3 of all proteins are modified. I didn't know it was that high. That's kind of a shock. So roughly 1/3 of all proteins are modified, folded, and assembled in the endoplasmic reticulum. What are the consequences if something goes wrong there? So the endoplasmic reticulum is the way station the protein goes through on the way to become either secreted from the cell or be embedded in the plasma membrane. So unfolded proteins create stress on the cell, and you potentially create situations where you now put less assembled proteins in the plasma membrane. Not only do you compromise the integrity of the membrane, but you also put in machinery that may no longer function properly. I like how they said that. You notice they call proteins machinery, and I like that because that's exactly what they are. They're little robots, and I like the wording there. You now have cells that may inappropriately and become rogue cells that could become a danger to the organism. So yeah, you have something that doesn't fold correctly, and the type of robot it is, it's not doing its job, and maybe it's doing something that it's not supposed to do. So rather than, yeah, go ahead.
A question: unfolded proteins. Does that mean this is a protein folding? Okay, you've got, that's one of the beginning point where the the DNA strands of DNA are being created, and then they fold, they match up, and then they fold. Do they unfold, or are these proteins that haven't folded?
Well, once the like the central dogma of biology is DNA becomes RNA becomes protein. So that RNA is like a ticker tape, and that ticker tape, it fires through something called a ribosome, and every 3 letters is read off 3 at a time, and it creates a peptide, which it's kind of like a ribosome poops out these peptides on the top based on the letters going in through the ticker tape. And as it continues to move out of the top of the ribosome, and these structures are formed based on the letters of RNA that went in, it will fold in on itself. And there's lots of research going on to find out exactly the type of forces that create that folding and how it folds into certain ways. So if you have some of the letters in that RNA are incorrect because of a mutation, it won't fold correctly in some circumstances. Sometimes you can have a mutation and it still will fold correctly, but in many cases it won't. Now when it doesn't, that little robot, it's not the same robot it was meant to be. And if in some cases it can cause damage to your body depending on how it folded. So exactly why and how it folds, I've read some good science on that, on how that happens, but I know there's lots of, it's an area of intense research on how it folds. So
we're not talking about the first part of the process where the cell absorbs these different proteins, and then they line up in that particular sequence. And I'm thinking that's where the protein folding is taking. That's where the folding is taking place. What you're talking about is after this folded protein goes through the RNA.
Yeah, once the protein's folded, so RNA is the first part, that's the code that creates the protein. Once that protein is all spit out from the ribosome, and it folds up.
I'm thinking of the amino acids. When the amino acids line up, is that what we're talking about here? Is that? That's
it. Yeah. So.
Okay. Sorry.
No worries. So I think I was at the rogue, inappropriately signal and become rogue cells that could become a danger to the organism. So rather than doing that, the cells try to reestablish equilibrium and then establish a balance between capacity and need. If that balance cannot be achieved, the cell submits apoptosis, which is the cell just dies, right? So if it gets that signaling system, it will just die. Within retinitis pigmentosa, for example, it's an inherited protein misfolding disease. So the protein is misfolded, and the whole cell gets frustrated by having misfolded protein, so the cell kills itself.
I like that word, frustrated.
I guess so, you know. So yeah, that's a great thing for the cell to kill itself. That's, I guess, a form of self-correction mechanism. So what keeps unfolded proteins from overwhelming the system? There are various machineries in the cell called molecular chaperones that protect proteins from undergoing premature interactions and bind to unfolded proteins and keep them soluble until they can properly mature. We are standing on the shoulders of giants. Work that helped identify the role of the chaperones led to the Lasker Award a few years ago, and those researchers too stood on the shoulders of others. I like whoever wrote this article. It's nice. When you first embarked in this area of research in 1993, what were you hoping to find? And we want to find the molecular machinery that allows one component of the cell to talk to another. There's virtually nothing known about what was taking place. We used yeast, a system easily accessible genetically, and asked the question, how does one part of the cell know what's going on in another part? That led us into the mode of discovery. It was a very, very simple question, and at the beginning we had simple answers. The deeper we dove, however, the more complex it became and the more beautiful it became. The single-cell organism findings applied directly to human physiology, with pretty much everything we learned from yeast applying to humans as well. So what did you find in these cells? We discovered machinery by which the cell has the capacity to fold the protein properly and pathway by which this happened. We mapped the components of the pathway, and everything turned out to be more exciting than we could have hoped for. It was basically pure curiosity. We had no preconceived notions that it would turn out to be anything as exciting as it was in the end. How are you able to map this out? How are we able to map out what was happening? We had engineered yeast cells and put an enzyme into the cells that produce a color reaction. So normally when proteins folded in the cell, they turn blue, but mutant cells didn't allow that signal to arrive, and they didn't change color. That allowed us to map the pathway and understand it. What questions still need to be answered in this arena? There are many, many questions at every level. At the mechanistic level, we try to understand the machinery. I love this guy. Try to understand the machinery as enzymes and little molecular machines, trying to see how we can manipulate them the best and push them a little bit one way or another.
That's the mindset you got to have. It's a machine.
It totally is. Yeah. When people ask me what proteins are, I love telling them they're tiny little nanobots in our bodies that have particular functions.
That's a good analogy.
So at another level, we have multiple branches at the signaling level, and we need to understand how they interact with one another. At a clinical level, we need to understand where we can interfere or intervene with the signaling pathway to benefit the patient. What is your research focusing on now? We are trying to figure out the molecular pathways by which the cells make the decisions and decide if they need to kill themselves. We're also mapping some of the components on the decision pathway and trying to figure out how to influence them one way or another and put them in disease models so we can see how we can affect a benefit. We're working on how to screen for and isolate small molecules to impact that pathway and test them in animal models for a number of different diseases. What significance will the Lasker Awards have for that research? I think it's thrilling for us. I'm particularly proud that we started from basic research interest and now it's developed into clinical relevance. We only got here because of sheer curiosity and the generous funding we got for this foundational research. At the beginning, it wasn't clear where the benefit would be, and we didn't propose at the beginning any translational applications. They only developed after we understood what was going on. The emphasis on basic curiosity in clinical research is so important to drive our knowledge forward. This award will help that in an enormous way. The publicity that comes with this and the focus on it for human health. So I love what again, this person said in that paragraph, which is there's no clear commercial interest in the beginning. And we've got to get past that. Governments have to do the basic research and fund it because the private industry always won't do that. So what is the greatest challenge currently facing researchers in basic biology and basic research? I think right now there's a climate in research funding where you have to, there we go, you have to justify translational applications at the onset. Curiosity isn't enough to justify that something is worth pursuing now, and I think to some degree it's not always the most effective way of moving forward. What do you tell your students interested in basic research working in the current climate? My advice is to be patient and the pendulum swings back. You need to educate the public about the importance of your work and just really justify the value of what you're doing. I think science education is incredibly important and the general public needs to understand that these discoveries are essential. Do you see therapeutic applications arising from your initial breakthrough in the foreseeable future? I certainly hope so. We have very active collaborations with biotechnology companies to develop components that will affect these pathways. They're putting them through all the tests for cancer and other diseases. I hope one of them will develop into a tangible drug. It's a very different approach for cancer, for example, because what we are looking at here are pathways for every cell. So Ed, did you catch all the gist of that? I really liked the way that was written. It seemed really accessible to me.
Yes. as well as I possibly could without more of a scientific background. And we talk about protein folding. I mean, doesn't that misfolded proteins? There you go. Misfolded proteins, that's the starting point for practically any genetic-based disease. Would misfolded proteins be important for mutation, though, also?
Well, I think I'm not absolutely certain, and I think there's lots of science that we haven't discovered, but I think yes, in cases, proteins can affect the epigenetics behind a cell, on how a cell expresses itself. And I think there's also, and again, I'm getting into a little bit of guesswork, but there's DNA repair mechanisms that specific proteins will go through your DNA and self-correct parts of your DNA. So if that wasn't working properly, yeah, I think it'd be reasonable to think, and there's probably a ton of good science that's a whole lot more accurate than my educated guess, but for sure, yeah, there's absolutely I like the analogy, the machine analogy, and a cell in the human body, really, or any living organism. It's like a car manufacturing plant. And if you think about the robots in the manufacturing line, those are the proteins. And you got to think, like, if one of those robotic arms that attaches the door to the car, if you change, one of the mechanisms within that robotic arm, it's not going to get the door on, right? So if you change something critical, like something in an elbow of that robotic arm, it's going to make a mistake. But if you change something like the color of the robotic arm, then it's still going to function. And I think that's a great analogy for proteins. We can accept a certain amount of mutations in our DNA, and it's fine. But if the wrong thing mutates, you can get into a situation where that protein will not function correctly, and it can lead to disease.
Yeah. I had read, maybe this a year ago, they said this is one of the great mysteries, protein folding. Not really understanding exactly how the amino acids line up in that little string, A, B, C, D, whatever it is. How does it line up exactly in the way it is supposed to line up?
All sorts of really good questions. But yeah, they need to. I like the message in that interview, and the message is we need to do basic research that doesn't necessarily. We can't look for a payoff. Government has to step up, and there's a positive effect on industry, and that's fine. But I think for the public good, we need to fund basic research, whether it's NASA or whatever it is. We need to fund it, and it doesn't take a lot of money, and the importance and value of all these things far surpasses the investment.
Well, in so many ways, you can't predict what the outcome is going to be. You're exploring. You're going on an exploration. You don't know what you're going to find.
Yeah, you don't know absolutely, you don't know. But what we do know, based on history, is anytime we've done this basic science, my suspicion, my very, very strong suspicion, is overwhelmingly it's paid dividends to society in many ways, including financial ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get those PhDs busy out there.
Yeah, that's basic. You keep treating an illness, a problem, at its most basic level. And if you can treat, this is true even about economics, anything. If you can nail it down to its most basic level and treat it there, that is the most efficient and best way of dealing with any problem. And there's so much we don't know. And yet look what we can do with how little we do know.
AJ, did you think that was straightforward, the way it was written? I thought that was really understandable for like the general public.
Yeah, it is really well written, and but I don't know, a lot of folding and stuff. It's hard to understand if you're not familiar with science and biology.
I almost wish they would use an analogy of something that somebody does understand to explain these things, because there's a lot of good analogies out there. That I like everything to be accessible. It's really important that everybody understands it.
That's another good point when it comes to trying to, if we're going to try to explain the benefits of something, we got to be able to explain in an accessible way to the public or to congressmen or whoever, people who don't have any kind of a scientific background, people like me. You've got to have someone who can communicate effectively. And you can't speak in just PhD talk. Then nobody but a PhD is going to understand you. So like you say, this kind of an article, and that's what I like about nature.com.
I just got texted, somebody that's watching us that I know, a friend of mine, and she made the comment that people don't want to equate proteins with machines in our body because they don't want to feel like we are machines. So that's a good point. A lot of people do not want to hear that we possibly might just, at our most finite level, come down to just being machine.
Yeah, I can remember when I was first I'm sorry, AJ, you say something?
No.
Didn't want to interrupt anyone, but I can remember when I first went online, I specifically did it to communicate with Christians, evangelical Christians, a group of people I knew nothing about. And I wanted to learn more about them. And there's a difference when you're speaking in scientific terms, where it's best if it's unemotional, a machine. You're not talking about a person. It's a machine. And it's different when you're talking to someone in the general public who says, I'm a person. What are you talking about? You know, I'm not a machine. I'm a person. And I tell you, it takes a lot of skill to be able to do that. And I did an excellent job in the article, I thought, in that particular regard.
Yeah, so much of the science news that comes out is just so complex. It really needs to be someone that's great at writing to be able to put good stories out and people to understand it.
We're talking about autistic people, and one aspect of autism is kind of an emotional detachment, if you will. But that's exactly what you need in the lab, that emotional detachment, so that you're just looking, you're just doing this thing. This isn't a flatworm. This isn't a biological flatworm you're working on. This is a piece of machinery that you're taking apart and looking at. So, you know, that emotional detachment is an absolute requirement in science. But it's hard otherwise.
And I think the reason for that is when you're emotionally attached to it, it leads to confirmation bias.
Exactly.
Right? You want to prove, because you're so emotionally involved, that with your 5 years of research you've done or whatever, that you want to prove that you're correct instead of trying to find the real answer. And sometimes that can lead to confirmation bias, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And we all do that. We all do that. I think it's very human. So it's hard to follow that scientific method.
When I go through science stories, I'm looking at what stories to put into this Hangout. Well, I have a particular interest. I have a bias towards a certain type of science story. AJ, you have a different. You're more interested in space, let's say. So I might put more stories in the lineup that relate to other things, biology, and you might put more things, you and Amy, talking about space.
Sure. We all have our passions.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing what training does, though. Like I noticed, I posted something on Science with a Twist 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Kiki, she's a PhD, isn't she?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She has her PhD. So I think all that training, the one thing I quite enjoyed was I posted something, and immediately she jumped on it and didn't buy it. Right? And it's that science training and that science mind that's it's a wonderful thing, and I don't think that comes easy. I think there's a lot of repetition is is necessary and to be unbiased like that. And I just thought it was interesting that it was Kiki that jumped in, and her being the one that has that that long-term training.
And Amy posted in the chat area Pluto. We have Pluto. Poor old Pluto. People get emotionally attached to this planet, Pluto. And now, you know, other scientists are saying, or astronomy. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about.
Astrophysics.
I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson was irate, and he's really entertaining to watch. And people were so in love with Pluto because it was named after a Disney character, and he said that was the attachment. Is Disney, you know, I guess in a way it was interfering with science. But people fell in love with Pluto because yeah, it's a Disney character.
Yeah, that's a cute name.
How dare you, you know, try to change Pluto? We like Pluto just the way he is.
There's a couple of stories that Pamela was going to cover, and one of them deals with the real problem in science that we were just talking about. But I'm going to go to another one because it has some interesting, I think, implications for human society. And it is human baboons with male companions live longer. And this is from Duke University. Numerous studies have linked social interactions to improved health and survival in humans, and new research confirms the same is true for baboons. A long-term study of more than 200 wild female baboons from the plains of southern Kenya finds that the most sociable females, measured by how often they engage in social grooming relative to their peers, live 2 or 3 times longer than their socially isolated counterparts. Socialization with males give females an even bigger longevity boost than socializing with other females, the researchers found. A handful of previous studies in baboons, rats, and dolphins suggested that same-sex friendships can improve animal health and survival. This is the first study that showed that opposite-sex friendships in animals can have a similar effect. Baboons take turns grooming each other to make friends and cement social bonds, an activity that involves picking dirt and parasites and then skin off each other's fur. Grooming is the baboon equivalent of gossip, or having a good conversation over a cup of tea. The researchers estimated social connectedness for 204 females by measuring how often they engage in social grooming. Relative to the rest of the group, they found the friendliest females lived 2 or 3 years longer than their more socially isolated peers, an effect that held up even after the research accounted for factors such as female rank, group size, and the number of female relatives. The females that socialized with both sexes lived the longest. But when researchers looked at female-female and male-female interactions separately, they found that the survival benefits of male companionship were even bigger, excuse me, than the survival benefits, were even bigger than the benefits of having friendship with other females. Females that socialized with other females the most were 34% less likely to die in a given period than those that interacted with other females. While the primary perks of male-female friendship are thought to be better care and protection for infants and more mating opportunities, the results show that females benefit directly too. Male larger size may make them better than females at defending their friends. So that would be one reason for getting more friendly with males. Social connectedness is so good for survival. Why are baboons less sociable than others? And forces that aren't exactly friendly might come into play. You could have the more dominant females pushing the less dominant females out. They found that female interactions with other females were less frequent with age, whereas their interactions with males stayed the same. If social isolation is simply an inevitable consequence of age-related declines in health and energy, then we expect to see similar declines in both same-sex and opposite-sex relationships, but their research suggested otherwise. When females get older, many of their old female peers start to pass away, and their daughters become tied to their own infants. Sounds familiar. Happens with humans too. I'm going to stop there. And my question is, does this kind of interaction, same-sex, intersex, intergender interaction inferring benefits, could that relate to humans as well? And my starting point is, I grew up in a period, 1940s, 1950s, and outside of dating and family life, in general, males tended to socialize with males, females tended to socialize with females. In school, we had two separate entrances in school. We had the boys' entrance and we had the girls' entrance. And they were opposite sides of the building. When it came to after-school activities, clubs and things, guys tended to socialize, hang out in one type of club. Girls tended to hang out in a different type of, in other clubs. And in traditional societies, we see that. I think of European cultures sometimes, where you have the men will be walking in front, and then 10, 15 feet behind will be the women. So the men are interacting with men, women interacting with women. And I see that, and I'm wondering if that is part of, it could be part of what goes into the fact that women live longer than men. And I'm wondering that our society is evolving so that there are now greater interactions between men and women. At work, for instance, where it used to be men did one kind of work and women did another, now you have women doing the same kinds of work as men. In the office, you see men and women interacting a lot more. I'm just wondering if this, I perceive, greater interaction between members of opposite sexes could result in a lowering of the longevity gap between men and women. And I will throw one more thing. My confirmation bias. I did my internet search, and I found an article that said exactly that. This is my confirmation bias coming into play. And this is from NBC News. NBC News, right? Between 1989 and 2009, life expectancy for males grew by 4.6 years, while predicted lifespan for women only rose 2.7 years. The manly surge narrowed the life expectancy gap to 5 years, 1 month, and 6 days, compared to a 7-year gap in 1989. Modern guys will live to be longer on an average age of 76.2 versus women 81.3. So there you go. Proof of my extrapolation. What do you think? There we go.
Hey, you got to use it. Awesome.
Yeah. We're living longer.
I want to hear what AJ has to say. I've been talking too much, so.
Oh,
What do you think? Is our society evolving so that we're seeing greater interactions outside of dating and family between members of the opposite sex?
I think maybe the man's life expectancy growing probably had a lot to do with more women working. We're not having to work as hard. No applause.
If I had an applause thing, I would hit it for you.
Pamela's here. Finally. She can come on this stuff. Hopefully she's here. But, well, I'll take diet. And I'm really going out on a limb here. But I remember I think growing up, women were far more conscious of eating a healthy diet and their diet than guys were. And now I see more men also becoming concerned with their diet. More men being concerned with eating properly.
I don't know. I see everyone trying to think about what they're eating more. I think it's kind of a cultural thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the organics. And...
Hello, Pamela. Are you here, Pamela?
I am. Your time zones have changed. I'm sorry. I didn't think I'd be this late.
That's probably my
Did your
fault.
daylight saving go or something like that?
Maybe I
No,
can-
it was my fault. I didn't, yeah. The time changed, so my bad. I should have checked. Hello.
Yeah, actually on my invite it said it was tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah, I was just covering the baboon story about female baboons who interact with male baboons living longer. And I was going off on this wild tangent about with human beings and the differences between the fact that in my opinion, modern society, where you have women interacting more with men at work and other places where when I was growing up, you had much more separation and you had less interacting between the sexes except for dating and family. Your husband, your partner, Chris, for instance. Chris is the modern man. The benefit of being with children. Guys never played with their children before. But now look at Chris, the great benefit he's gaining from being with Chelsea, and he's going to live longer. What do you think, Pamela?
Yeah. Oh, so he's going to live longer as a result. Awesome. I saw that story, but I hadn't read it yet. Something I should read it before I ask, but I was just going to say that I know that it's been discovered in the past, not necessarily with baboons, but with humans, that testosterone is an antidepressant for women. So just being around men, smelling them, taking in the testosterone is actually really good for our mental health. Did that article delve into that?
No, not really. It was pretty much talking about male and female baboons.
Same thing for sex.
Okay.
That's interesting.
So testosterone is an antidepressant to women. I'm trying to think of a great pickup line now for myself that, hey, I'm an antidepressant for you.
Because they found with if you're pregnant with a male, a boy, a son, you're more likely, more susceptible to have postpartum depression. Because while you're pregnant, that you're getting that testosterone, it's an antidepressant. So all of a sudden, your like Prozac equivalent is gone when you give birth, and so you're more likely to have postpartum depression than if you're carrying a girl.
I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's how they could tell if you're having a boy or a girl before ultrasounds.
Was it? I don't know about that. Yeah, was it? Cool. There you go. Yeah, so you can use it as a pickup line. I'm healthy for your mental health. I'm good for you.
Love it.
We should create a science pickup lines on the website, just so.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know if this is scientifically true. A woman worked with me. Her husband was a doctor, and she was in medical school for a while. And she said she would not date anyone in medical school. She didn't want to date, like scientists. They were the worst,
Well,
Okay.
All they wanted was the sex. All they wanted to do was jump
What's
on the
wrong?
girl as quickly as possible.
What's wrong with that?
yeah.
Well, some women like a little interplay. They like the chocolate. They like to bring over, maybe flowers or something.
Open the door for him.
Yeah,
mean,
so this is why I don't date
Dale,
women.
you didn't get to see Dale playing in his guitar. That used to be something. Guys would go out and they would strum and sing to the ladies, give them a little serenade.
What? Yeah, I like that.
I'm like the anti-Pied Piper, though. Whenever I go with my guitar, people run. I'm like mosquito spray for women.
Right.
You have to work your pickup lines into your lyrics for your guitar.
Exactly. Need to make a science pickup line song. So we have one. We have one thing, and we can incorporate the word testosterone into the pickup line into our first song. But we need more material. So as we go through these stories, we have to relate them to pickup lines.
This is something that I've always found strange about women too, and again, this is another reason I don't date them, because society seems to think that a man being bald is undesirable generally, but baldness comes from having an overproduction of testosterone. So bald guys are actually super, super duper hot.
Where's that applause thing? I
Uh,
applaud you on that.
But so it doesn't make so it doesn't make any sense that society has stipulated that.
So AJ, like our testosterone meters aren't doing very well here, so that's why, at least in my case, women are running from me. So they can tell by my hair, right? I try to cut it as often as I can, and now she has me really paranoid. So I may just shave it all off and just pretend.
Yeah, me too.
Pretend you're bald.
I'd heard that intelligence was, maybe we talked about in a story last year, that men that had like really hairy chests and stuff that was a sign of intelligence or
Oh no.
medically.
That's probably why I like it then.
Oh no.
Yet, don't shave anything. No manscaping.
I've got a double whammy.
Oh,
You can put some stick on, and you can shave this and stick it on there.
There you go.
That's it. Problem solved. No, but
So
again, okay, there you go. So society has stipulated that they like men who are waxed, though, right? Because in all these music videos and that, the guys are waxed. And I think, well, that's like dating a 14-year-old or something. I'm not attracted to that.
There we go. Amy has posted a little pickup line there in the chat area. Are you vaporizing from a solid state? Because you're sublime.
I love it.
I don't know if that'd work on the girls around here.
No, well, I was about to say that. That's a way to, because if they don't get it, they're not smart enough. You just move on. Don't bother buying them a drink.
That's why you don't see me talking in the bars very much.
Yeah. But see, if you get someone who laughs at that, buy her 10 drinks.
Right.
Yeah.
You talk about changes in society, and now we're wandering off into but like single bars and stuff like that. What a change! Back in the 40s, 50s, it was always expected the guy would make the first move. Now women always, girls always control at that point the dating process with little hints, and they found ways. But basically, the whole social norm was the guy had to make the first move, so to speak.
Oh,
The guy had to ask the girl out for the dance, and now that's completely thrown out the window. And
well,
more often than not, it's the girls making the first move.
Well, if women are, in the role of CEOs more and more, why can't they be the ones that ask the guys out?
And don't get me talking about the senior center. Oh my God, those women at the senior center, man! They're passing you telephone numbers, and it's like I'm a piece of meat. I don't know.
It's like rabbits.
That's because guys die first and they live longer, and there's less selection in their age group, so they've got to fight over the ones that are there.
Mm-hmm.
You're in your prime, Ed.
Yes. Oh man, I have absolutely no problems having sex anytime I want. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. Whereas in the 1960s, oh my God, I can't tell you how many drinks I had thrown in my face. Oh.
Ed, can I fly there to your location and I'll be your wingman?
Oh heck, yeah. Well, you're still too young. You got to learn a little bit more. You got to put another 10 or 20 years on you before you learn.
I'm an old man.
To deal with women.
I'm an old man, Ed. I can totally be your wingman. Totally. I can learn from your experience. And I don't mind an older woman. Totally. Experience is a good thing.
I agree 100%, and I'm in on this wingman thing. We got
Ed has 2 wingmen now.
2 wingmen. I don't need wingmen. I want wing women. I don't want wingmen. Come on. And Patrick, here we go. Patrick is at it. I feel like an accretion disc, pulled in by you.
That's awesome.
We're going to have to put these pickup lines to a test. Scientifically, that is.
So, Amy, you've started a Tumblr blog, have you? We should put it on a Facebook page as well.
That's actually not my Tumblr. That was one that I found. I do have a Tumblr, but my Tumblr's not about pickup lines.
Okay. I thought you must have I haven't looked at it yet, at the link. I thought you must have just done it. I went, wow, she's fast.
I assumed she created it.
Nope. Someone beat me to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked that one about gravitational lensing. That was funny.
All right. Pamela, picking on you.
Yes. Okay.
You posted earlier, well, 2 interesting things
Thanks.
you posted about. One had to do with science. You have a very interesting Facebook feed, I must say. And one had to do with the fake story, the ruins of an ancient city discovered in the Australian desert. Wahoo!
Yeah.
And perhaps you want to talk about that. And then later we'll get into the whole bus thing, the experience you had in the bus, which is equally interesting.
Oh, you want to talk about that? Yeah. Sure, okay.
Either one you want, your choice.
Well, okay. Well, yeah, I just don't know why people are posting fake science stories. They're actually going to a lot of trouble to do so. They're putting photographs. Why? I don't get it. It's just a waste of everyone's time, because I see these headlines and I click on it and I go, wow. So for starters, I'm wasting my downloads, and often I'm on mobile internet. I'm in Australia. Our internet speeds are literally, they're compared to Romania, okay? So I'm waiting for a page to load to read a very exciting story according to the thing, and then I'm reading through it and I'm going, no, that's not right. I mean, I've been to that part of the desert. I was there just quite recently. What the hell? And then you read through, so then you go and check it on the blog, and it's just meant to be satire, but satire means it's funny, and it's not funny. And this is just one example of hundreds of stories that are out there. Why are people wasting their time, let alone mine and yours, on putting these stories together? I don't understand. Stop doing it. You're insane. So, yeah, I mean, there would never be an ancient ruined city of Polynesian and Asian people out in the desert, and it's supposed to be right next to Uluru. Now, Uluru is a very large rock in the middle of Australia, and it's the meeting place. It has been for 100,000 years of the traditional owners of the land and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia. So of their elders, so they go there and they would exchange information about the different tribes. They exchanged languages, and it became even more important when white people, British people, invaded this country, because that was where they would go and exchange information and keep their culture alive. There is no way you would have an ancient city buried right next to Uluru. And that's what this story was saying, that they just dug up and there was all gold there and everything. And but this is just one of many. We all, like Ed, you were saying you got pulled in by another, I don't know what story that was, but the other day. Why? Stop it. If I want to read fiction, I will voluntarily read fiction. I have books, other books for that.
Yeah, that particular Australian story, I saw why. I can understand that, for instance, if you're trying to get attention for some reason. Or, they talked about, like, The Onion is a satirical newspaper that has some, real
yeah, but that's funny.
But this wasn't funny. It wasn't satirical.
No. And this is just one of many that are out there. I've been pulled in by heaps. I go, wow, cool. And then you do a background check afterwards and you go, well, that was a waste of 10 minutes of my life. And, you only get 80 years on the planet if you look after yourself and don't have an accident. Mm-hmm. Don't waste my 80 years, people. You're pissing me off. End of rant.
Yeah,
I'll go to The Onion if I want to see something like that.
Yeah, I like The Onion. That's hilarious.
One of the difficulties...
Sorry, Patrick's got 2 centuries. Sorry, Patrick.
I got 2 centuries.
Nice.
Oh, your eyes are like black holes. I got lost in them. But I won't.
I like that one. That didn't offend me.
Oh, gotta get out my calls.
And that's a pain for me, because one of the things I do is I go through science stories every day, seeing which stories I want to post to my little magazine, Science Island. And then I think this is a really neat story, and I post it to Science Island, and then I find out later it's either bogus or it's misrepresented, it's poor research. That's a problem. You get the major media, for instance. Somebody will post a story. We had I think earlier, Amy met in the chat area was talking about the Higgs boson deal, where Stephen Hawking in a book talked about how the Higgs boson, or the Higgs, not the Higgs boson, but the Higgs potential, could result in our universe being destroyed. Okay. Now he went on to explain a little bit later that that's very unlikely to happen. But the major media isn't going to pick up on that very unlikely to happen. They're going to pick up on the first part of the story, the Higgs boson. In fact, they're not even going to say Higgs potential. They're going to say the Higgs boson. Stephen Hawking says it could destroy the universe or something like that. And you have so many of these stories that the major media is picking up on, and it's misinformation to the general public who'll believe anything. That's not good for science.
No, but that's something. Just after we'd had that thread about the fake story about the civilization found here in Australia, Justin and I did Meaningless Words yesterday, and we were talking. We ended up finding that Toyota's the car of choice for terrorists. You'll have to watch the episode to see that. So anyway, but we had on our news this this Nissan catching a plane, and so I mentioned it and on the show, and Justin went no, because he works for Honda, you know, so he doesn't want Nissan catching planes. And it turned out to be an advertisement, but he said that happens there as well. Sometimes the local news will run a story, and they probably retract it later, but you don't see the retraction.
Mm-hmm.
So I got sucked in until yesterday. It was something that I saw about a month ago. So it's happening all the time, and it's happening on all different media, not just across the internet in written form. So I don't know. I don't know how to stop these people. Oh, I don't know. It was a Nissan. You call them pickups. I don't know what model.
Oh.
You know, they're...
But if you type in, you know, Nissan pickup catching a plane on touchdown or something, you'll see it. It's on YouTube.
I'll check out the video.
Sounds familiar.
You know, Pamela, you're involved in a lot of social action things, and there's also a lot of articles that are written about an event. And if you read 6 different stories, the event will read differently 6 different ways. And there's so much bias in the reporting on a lot of events, social events like Occupy whatever, the different Occupy demonstrations. Conspiracy theories. We love conspiracy theories. And so somebody somewhere says something that validates your conspiracy theory, and you run with it, and it's just a complete hoax.
Yeah.
And then you feel stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens. That happens as well. That's right. Yeah, there's very few sources that I when it comes to sort of political stuff, there's very few that I trust.
I hear that.
Yeah.
And you would think that scientists wouldn't be guilty of that, but with the scientific papers, you get the same thing. You'll get, as we were talking about earlier, confirmation bias on the part of a particular researcher. They're looking for a result, and they find that result, son of a gun.
Yeah. Yeah, something that always comes to my mind is years and years and years and years and years ago on This Week in Science, Justin brought a story that if you eat cranberries, you don't have to brush your teeth, right? And this is because they're actually really good for your teeth, look after them, blah, blah, blah. And he was really excited. And I remember Kirsten looking it up, and she said that so it was real research, but it was funded by an organization that sells cranberries. So you can't believe it. And I remember thinking, what? Yeah. Yeah. So it happens a lot.
I remember...
So yeah, you have to look at who's funding the research here.
I'm probably going to get the details messed up, but there was a periodical in, I think it was out of the British, The Lancet, something like that. And they carried a story dealing with problems with vaccination, and it was completely bogus. And so you could tell this was at one time a fairly prestigious paper, and they just didn't do the research. They didn't look into the story like they should. I see that all the time. And peer review, Patrick is talking about peer review. That is obviously key because you can have a lot of the stories I post, probably the majority of the stories I post, may not have been peer reviewed. So you've got these caveats at the end of the story, but that's something important to know, that it hasn't been peer reviewed, so this is just one researcher's finding.
I don't know. Maybe the tree hugger articles, but I'd say half of them are peer reviewed.
Oh, tree hugger is biased. Because it obviously has a fault. Every periodical practically has a bias. Just tell me what the bias. That's another thing. Just tell me what your bias is, and I'm happy. When you talk about politics, there's it's World Press Review, and it reprints stories from around the world, and it reproduces them from different papers in different countries, but it says centralist, liberal, conservative, so that I know the bias beforehand before I'm reading it.
You just remind me, I have done a couple of assignments this year. For those who don't know, I'm doing my law degree and criminology degree. And I've gone into the essay thinking, with my opinion, with my bias, looking for evidence to back it up. I mean, you're only talking about 2,000, 3,000 words, And by the time I've done the reading on a couple of them, I wrote the complete opposite of what I intended to write because I went, oh, wait, I'm wrong. Now I have a different opinion. So just one example is... I don't know if I do know you do this. You do this there as well. Women with children under 5 actually having their children with them in prison. So I went, what? That's terrible. Why are we doing that? And then I did the research and found it's actually really, really good for both the child and the mum. So I completely changed my opinion and wrote my essay accordingly. And I can't think what the other one was, but it ended up being surprised. So I couldn't write to my bias because the research just wasn't there.
I know there's a doctor out there who wrote a really good book that I read, Ben Goldacre, and he kind of teaches you how to read through clinical trials and discover and figure out what's really true and what's not true and how to understand the data, and he does it in a really simple way. You have to have a little patience going through the book, but if you read it through, it's written simple enough that anybody can understand it. But yeah, Ben Goldacre, it's a great read that you can do in a weekend. It's called Bad Science, and it really arms you with knowledge so that when you do see something, you can determine whether it's bogus or not. Because lots of times it's really hard. The disguise that they dress up some of these clinical studies with are easily misleading.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I'll look that up. I'll probably get it as an ebook. Is it available?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. I think it's an ebook as well. And Ben Goldacre,
he's very good at that.
Yeah, he's on TED too. He did a TED talk, which was quite good.
If you look up Ben Goldacre, he's British, I think, and you'll probably find a lot of good stories along. He has a Twitter feed. He's been involved in trying to debunk this vaccination thing, climate change.
Yeah, no, he's great.
The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. That's an excellent podcast. And they have a bias, of course, but they also do a very good job of debunking different stories, science stories.
Yeah, they have a blog, Neurologica blog, I think. That's quite good.
Oh, there's the link in the chat area Dale posted. What does anyone want to talk about?
Or did you wanted to talk about the bus, did you?
That was interesting. Why don't we talk about that?
Oh, well, in the end, it turned out
I'll put in a link there, because earlier I was talking about how changes in society, and this is a very definite change in society for the better. Go ahead, Pamela.
Oh, okay. Well, I was on a bus the other day, and I had to feed my baby on the bus, and so I whipped out my boob and popped it in her mouth, because that's what you do. I'm a mammal. And as I was getting off the bus, I was still feeding my baby, walking along the aisle with her, And the bus driver told me that I needed to have a cover over my baby while I'm feeding her. And I went, well, no, because the World Health Organization has found that covering your baby's head, that kind of thing, can lead to sudden infant death syndrome. And also we need to be able to look into each other's eyes. Like often I'll be looking at her, and she looks into my eyes as she's eating, And she'll smile and she'll giggle and then she'll go back to eating, and that's all part of the experience. And if I cover her up, we can't do that, and you know, it's not good, and it's not fresh air for her, things like that. That's actually really not healthy to cover. And so I said that to her, and I said, you know, when you start eating with a cover over your head, then I'll put a cover over my baby's head. So, and she said, well, and then she looked, you know, offended, and then she goes, this is what irked me. She said, she rolled her eyes, and she goes, I know it's natural, but blah blah blah. And I thought, well, doing this infers that it's not natural, that it actually is natural. So what's this all about, you know? And then she said, oh, but it's the policy of the bus company. And I went, right, I'll be calling your boss tomorrow. And she went, oh, okay. So I called her boss, and they went, no, that's not our policy. And you can breastfeed however and wherever you want, and no one can say anything at all to you. So then they called her in for an interview and informed her of that. And then it got really weird, because she reckons that the reason she said it was for my protection, because apparently there was a drunk guy on the bus and a drugged guy on the bus who looked at me while I was feeding my baby, but they got off the bus several stops before me. So, and I was actually with my partner, so with my man and my baby. The family were all together, so it wasn't as if it was just me. And so she thought that they might come and attack me or something because I had my boob out or something. So she's obviously a disturbed person with men issues and boob issues. So yeah, that was the thing. But the thing is, what I worried about is I'm 34 years old, so I question stuff like that, and you know, no one tells me what to do. But if I were 20 years old, I might be really embarrassed by that situation, and you know, wow, yeah, I need to cover up, and then I might actually think, well, I don't want to breastfeed anymore because that was really embarrassing. So I'll put my baby on formula. Formula is brilliant if you can't breastfeed, and I know women who can't. It's just not physically possible, and you have to use formula, of course. I was formula fed, but if you can breastfeed, you really, 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 really should, because it's really there's a lot of reasons to. Yeah, it is so much better, and it's better for you as well. There's a bonding experience. There's a lot less crappy nappies because it's such a good food. My baby is 5 months old now. She's only crapping once a day. The other nappies are just wet. It's so much better for you. You don't have to sterilize bottles, you know. Plus, of course, it is healthier for the baby.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right.
So yeah, so this woman's psyche, you know, could actually be having quite an impact on people's whole lives. So please, anyone out there, don't be embarrassed about breastfeeding, no matter what. And if anyone tells you not to do it, you call their boss and you find out, because it's actually illegal in this country anyway to have a policy like that.
So, Pamela, let me play devil's advocate for a moment. So let's look at it as an equality issue. So, like, I can't breastfeed in a bus, right? So women shouldn't be able to either. Is that a good argument? You're a lawyer, right?
You might have to pay for it.
That's ridiculous. Sorry.
Thank you. I just think the whole thing is ridiculous. I mean, breastfeeding is totally natural, and that it even became an issue is just, it's stupid. I'm sorry. That's a strong word that I never usually use, but it's just stupid. Hello. But yeah, I don't know. Where does that come from? So a person that's programmed to think that way, what historical experiences has she had that makes it so that breastfeeding on a bus is not a natural thing?
Propaganda by the formula people.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I saw a really good
I don't know.
picture. I saw a brilliant picture of this is what happens and women. I saw a brilliant picture, and it said this is what happens when women are not allowed to breastfeed in public, and it showed a really, really dirty bathroom stall of her sitting there trying to feed her baby in this disgusting environment. And I thought it was just a great promotion for this is what you're doing. you're throwing these women into these awful, full of bacteria places, because where else are you going to go in public? It's silly. Like, the whole thing is silly and really irrelevant. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
I
it's
don't use those
cultural.
mothers' rooms. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was just saying I don't use those mothers' rooms. That's disgusting. I just do it wherever I am. But I mean, she's 5 months
It
old,
is.
and this is the first time that I've ever had a complaint. So.
When I was back in the 40s and 50s, I can almost guarantee you women were not allowed to show their nipples in public, the nipple of death. So I'm going to guess, in the 40s and 50s, women were not allowed to breastfeed their babies in public.
But your nipples
And also
not
you
in
had
public.
formula companies with their publicity
Yeah.
campaigns emphasizing use formula. And now, where you have many more women, in fact, breastfeeding, and it's better for the woman and better for the child. We're going to have healthier children.
Yeah. But your nipple's
That's
not
funny, I
in
could-
public. Your nipple is in your child's mouth. It's only the little bit of flesh around the nipple at the top that's not blocked off. I mean, my bikini shows way more of my boob than when my child is on it.
So
And
what
what I
we
wanna know
need
is-
is, what you need is, you
So-
need
so this
people
is-
on the bus
Yeah.
who've got a little ruler, and they go over and see how much of your breast is exposing. And if you go over that line, oh no, you got to cover up.
Yeah. No, I appreciated the bus company getting back to me. They said, no, that doesn't represent us at all. You do whatever you want. You feel free to jump on any bus and you do whatever you have to do, and we fully support breastfeeding. So it wasn't them. It was, but then again, they hired this person and trained her. So they take some responsibility, and they did apologize profusely, and that's fine. And I accept that. So I don't need to go, arranging some people wanted to do a feed-in, and a bunch of women with their babies wanted to get on the bus and all breastfeed at the same time as a demonstration. And if we have to, we will, but we don't need to do that right now. But I was just completely outraged that they might have this policy. But what I want to know is too, like, road, what was she doing watching these guys who were apparently looking at me and watching me breastfeed? I mean, men look at boobs. They just do. They don't even know they're doing it. They don't even mean to do it most of the time. But if there's a boob in the vicinity, straight men anyway, they look. So what?
I would think
If they sit there and stare and they start drooling, I get a bit creeped out if that happens. But if a guy's just sort of have a quick glance and then looks away, I mean, that's what men do.
Boobs make me sleepy. Is that normal?
Milk does, right?
What age were you breastfed to? Because they make my daughter sleepy too.
No, I don't know. Maybe it's maybe I look at boobs as pillows, and that makes me sleepy.
Right. Okay.
Maybe
Yeah, my
last
daughter
time-
falls asleep on my boob quite often.
Well, warm, soft, right? It would be totally comfortable.
Hmm.
every time.
Patrick was sharing a picture. We're talking about Parent of the Year award, perhaps, and I saw this as well. This is an actual invention. The baby cage.
Oh,
Yeah,
Wow.
just put that kid out in the cage, out in the fresh air. Give him plenty of fresh air.
Oh my.
Sticking out of apartment windows in London in the 20s and 30s.
It's based on a book.
Is
Yeah,
this
The Care and Feeding of Children, a book by Dr. Luther Emmett Holt. Airing of babies and children and keeping their rooms very cool. Sleeping with windows open unless it's below freezing. Airing the baby meant dressing her up and opening all the windows even in winter, starting when the child was 1 month old. There you go. That can't be. That's safe.
That's scary.
it's perfectly safe if you build it right.
Never mind the falcon.
You can just take them to the park, though. You don't need to put them out the window.
But that's so inconvenient.
Well, if you do, you should cover them.
Yeah, right.
It's the law.
No, I don't put my baby in a cage.
I don't know. I've seen some kids I'd like to put in a cage.
Yeah.
Ye of little patience.
Yeah, I don't like other people's children, just mine.
We're nearing 10:45. TWIS starts at 11, supposedly. We'll keep going. Obviously, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of interesting subjects we can talk about, science or otherwise. But
Jani?
I'm just going to mute and go check on my daughter. She's with her dad.
Going off into a tangent, I can throw in Stephen Hawking's story about the Higgs boson in Doctor Who. I can link the two. So with the Stephen Hawking's story about the Higgs potential could destroy the universe, what he's talking, sort of, kinda, from my viewpoint, whether the universe is, let's say, more unstable. And more unstable, of course, means wibbly-wobbly. And we know Doctor Who has already told us that the universe is wibbly-wobbly. So Stephen Hawking could well be right. And he also talked about how you'd need a particle accelerator bigger than the Earth or a TARDIS. That's wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey.
There was a great, actually, Storify that Katie Mack, she's a physicist, she posted, or she tweeted about it. And I have to find a link for it. It's on my phone. But it helps with the explanation of the Higgs potential versus Higgs boson and why it's not going to destroy the Earth or the universe. Let me see if I can find it.
Need I remind you that the TARDIS is bigger on the inside and powered by an exploding star to begin with?
Yes.
Yes. It
Or it's smaller on the outside, whichever way you want to look at it.
Let's see.
Okay.
Is that article you posted in Facebook?
Yep, I found it.
Okay.
And then I think in there it links to another one on, or I have the link to the other one on the World Science Festival. Here's another good one to read.
You also have a very interesting feed on your all kinds of space stuff, maybe on your Facebook.
I love space stuff. I love science stuff in general.
Let's see.
So basically she explains 6 reasons why you shouldn't worry about the universe going boom and why the Higgs boson can't hurt you. The first one says, its mass is such that current theories suggest the universe may not be stable. If our universe is metastable, i.e. in danger of vacuum decay, it's very unlikely to happen in the next several billion years. And if the universe did undergo vacuum decay, we'd never see it coming and we wouldn't be able to either cause or prevent it. There's almost certainly some new physics that will tell us our universe is actually not metastable. And early universe probability had energies far above 100 billion gig of electrons. If the universe could be destroyed by those energies, it would have happened then, as opposed to now. And ultra-high energy cosmic rays have been found higher than those energies, and they would have already destroyed the universe. So. I think a lot of times whenever reporters get a hold of this, they just see Higgs and they automatically think boson.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's the Higgs, but that's what I picked it up on. They're talking about the Higgs boson itself. I think part of that, I'm wondering if part of that story may have originated with the book publisher.
Probably. Maybe to start.
Publisher saying, hey, we got a nice headline here. Stephen Hawking said Higgs will blow up the universe. Maybe we can get some, Twitter feeds and get a discussion and we sell us a bunch of books.
That makes sense.
Something else. Interesting thing for me the other day is I've got a blog. The first blog I started writing, but it got to be too much work, so I discontinued it 3 years ago. And I'm still getting people making comments and posting about some of the stories. In fact, now on Science Island, the blog I post to every single day, I get maybe 30, 40 people that have subscribed to it. This is a blog that I haven't posted a thing to it for 3 years, and on the 1st of September, 128 people. 130. I mean, I get more traction when I write nothing than when I write something. I don't know, I must be doing this wrong.
Interesting.
Are you sure they're not spam bots?
Today's response.
Let's see this.
So, Amy, when it gets noisy, is that your bird going crazy?
Oh, she has multiple birds.
I have 3, but what do you mean when it gets noisy? Is it noisy on my computer?
Well, a little earlier, it sounded like a flapping sound, and
It could. What I think is happening is I think it's the fan on my laptop because it's old and it gets rather warm, and I can hear the fan. So I think a lot of times that's what comes across whenever I'm either like on Skype or in a hangout like this.
Cool.
But the birds actually have their own room, and they're already in bed, so definitely will not be them. They have to go to bed at like 7 or else they get crazy.
So you have a bedtime for them?
Yep.
Do you put a blanket over top of their cage, or are they out all the time?
I do. No, I put a blanket over top of their cage and they go right to sleep. It works like a charm.
That's awesome. That's so cute. Look at the little baby.
Chelsea.
Hello, baby.
That's another change. Boy, these kids, I mean, even at 5 months old, they're becoming internet stars. Probably Chelsea will start her own blog when she's about 1 or 2. She'll start posting political stories, following her mother to trials and demonstrations.
No, she's just about ready to ride a motorbike. Yeah.
Oh, big smile.
Pamela, how about Chris's family back in England?
Yes.
Been able to, I don't know, do you guys Skype with them or anything where they can see the baby?
Yeah. Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Every time they say, "Oh, she's grown," she just grows so much all the time. She's desperate to walk. We watched a program last night, actually, about the secret lives of babies, and I learned a few things new. And one of them was that they taste color and they smell sound, because their brain isn't quite sorted out the way it should be yet, or not the way it should be, I should say, but the way ours is. That takes time, and so all their senses are mixed up. But that means that they're really adaptable, so they can adapt to any situation without any trouble.
They taste color. Okay.
And smell sound. Yeah.
I don't know about smell, but certainly colors and taste. I mean, even we do that. If we look at a particular food, and maybe it's in a food group that we like and it's presented so it's nice and pretty, it tastes better to us. Probably along the same thing.
That's true. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, Dale, you want to serenade
No,
Pamela's
sorry.
child there?
I
Serenade.
don't know any Australian nursery rhymes. Should I
Neither
try
do
one?
I.
Your days on the rock and roll trail. Man, I can't play an instrument to save my soul.
Maybe hard rock. She likes hard rock, maybe? No?
Yeah, she does.
Does she listen to music?
She likes all music. Yeah. She loves music.
Did you guys even hear that? Did it go through the mic?
Oh, wow. I heard it.
Yeah. Yeah, I put the headphone to her ear, and she got startled. She went, "Oh."
That's cute.
How's her communication, Chelsea? Chelsea's
Yeah,
communication.
yeah,
Can you understand her better?
Oh yeah,
If you want something?
yeah. Since she was about 2 months old, I've known what's a hungry cry, nappy cry, uncomfortable, bored. Yeah, they're all different cries.
I'm bored. I want to go on the
She
motorbike.
gets bored. Yeah, she gets bored really easily.
I want to be a
Entertaining
baby.
all the time.
I want to be a baby again. Wouldn't that be great to be a baby again? Just to be able to slobber on
I
yourself.
don't know.
You said you wanted.
You can do that when you're 85 as well. So something if you finish with the science stories, can I plug something that I'm about to do? Yeah. Okay. Well, I have to. It's fundraising with a twist, right? Because I'm going to give the money back to people. So we were told we were told blatantly today that we need to put Australian dollars, or actually I'll do it in pounds, Great British pounds, $62,500 in the bank for 6 months for residency purposes. The guy said it doesn't matter how you get it, and it doesn't matter if after a day after the 6 months it's not in your bank account again. So I'm thinking about how to fundraise 62,500 Great British pounds and then give it back to people after 6 months. To circumvent a stupid law. This is how stupid the laws are for immigration.
Oh, so this is. I
None
didn't
of them make
hear
any
what you were saying. So it
rational.
involves your ability to immigrate.
Yeah. So the twist is starting. Jani said. So I'm putting together a fundraiser with a twist where I'll give the money back after 6 months. If you have any ideas of what's the best way to do that, let me know. But it's ridiculous. It's so easy to get around these laws. Why have them?
Tweet is starting soon.
Alright. We'll be ending this.
Alright.
Yes.
It's live already. Tweet is live.
Okay, Yanni. Thanks. Alright. I'll end the broadcast.